Brand of a champion in every sport, every game, every competition. That's what lifts them up out of their seats, up on their feet, yelling, screaming, shrieking like mad. Waving arms, hats, programs, anything they can lay their hands on. Roaring approval for the winning thrust. The wallop that busts up the old ball game and drives the winning run over the plate. The deciding points that swish through the nets on the basketball court. The space-eating stride that snaps the tape in record time. The uncanny accuracy that breaks par on the golf course. What makes champions? What assures success in any kind of contest? What sets a leader apart from a challenger? Drawing the crowds that always cheer champions. A will to win, physical fitness, expert training, constant, never-ending practice. We know those things all play important parts. But in the makeup of any champion, man, team, or product, there's always something more. An indefinable something the others lack. In every competition, lots of contestants have the elements it takes to win, but only one has all those elements, plus the brand of a champion. Watch the wind-up and delivery of a big league hurler. Easy, graceful form, blinding speed, bewildering hooks and slants and curves. But above everything else, control. The control that makes champions. Absolute command of direction to put that ball just where it should go. Another kind of control puts the old scoring punch in the ball game. Control to pick just the right pitch and drive it safely for a run-scoring hit. Supreme command of vision, mind, and muscle to strike the deciding blow, to tuck the game into the winning column, and thrill the crowd into wild acclaim for a champion. On the football field, another championship quality, timing. Precision of movement at just the right instant to spill the interference and break up a play and bring the ball carrier down to the ground. It's timing of a different sort that yields the touchdown thrust. Timing of each twist and turn and change of pace. Ability to dodge, cut back, speed up, blow down. To take a star over the last white marker. To bring fans cheering to their feet. And here's something else to cheer about. Top-notch performance on the springboard. Balance, smoothness, timed with championship precision. Performance of this kind usually calls for another championship quality, natural growth. For so often it's the child on unsteady blades that grows through the years to become a champion of the ice. In swimming, too, every winning effort, every scoring stroke usually dates back to the growing days of childhood, back to water babies like these. Coming contestants of a sport whose championships are largely determined by natural growth and early training. And still another sport, a sport whose champions shoot down icy slides at mile-a-minute speed, soar far through the air on wings of wood, and land lightly as a feather to set new world records for distance, form, and skill. Records foreseen on tiny feet that flounder through the snow. For in skiing, too, natural growth is one of the most important factors in the evolution of a champion. Still another youngster destined for the world of sports. But in the sport of kings, it's yet another championship quality that counts. Heritage. Generations of careful breeding, unbroken strains of blooded aristocrats provide the long, rangy limbs, sound wind, and compact, strong body that mark a champion of the turf. Provide the brand of a champion that pulls a leader away from the pack, out in front, flashing down the stretch. A winner whose triumphs were forecast by the records of his sire and dam and those who went before them. Heritage, natural growth, timing, control. These are the qualities that make champions.
Another sport, other horses born to the purple from blue ribbon winners. This one's name is Ormond, and he is rated one of the finest thoroughbreds in the country. His owner, Mr. Fred Pabst, a man who knows what makes champions, and who raises them on his farm at Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. Prize cattle, prize horses, prize grain. Here is Pabst Cascade Colanthus, Grand Champion Holstein, who brought to the Pabst farm the Jonah Bell Trophy, awarded at the National Dairy Show for the best 3 generations of Holstein females. The farm's trophy room displays a host of prized awards that mark the many victories scored by Mr. Pabst's entries in various shows and contests. Cups and ribbons that pay tribute to a long line of champions that only recently, in one season alone, brought to the Pabst farms in national competition at 4 Midwestern state fairs 18 first ribbons in all classes and a host of special trophies. But the most important of all the ribbons that bear the Pabst name is the one which adorns a famous brand of beer, a brand that has been acclaimed champion by beer drinkers the world over, Pabst Blue Ribbon Beer. At the world's Columbian Exposition at Chicago in 1893, Pabst received first award among all beers, domestic or foreign. Yet this is just one of dozens of medals and awards that mark Pabst's outstanding triumph in world competition. For Pabst has received citations and medals of merit all over the world in competition in which it has been entered during the past 3/4 of a century. Awards that confirm the verdict of millions that Pabst is the championship beer, product of a championship process in which are found again all the qualities that make champions: heritage, natural growth, timing, and control. Founded in 1844 by Fred Pabst's great-grandfather, the original 300-barrel brewery has steadily grown larger, finer, greater through the years to meet the ever-increasing demand for the best malt products that money can buy. Until today, the 2 huge modern breweries at Milwaukee, Wisconsin and Peoria, Illinois cover 25 acres, 41 separate buildings, some stone-walled, ivy-covered, some as new and modern as tomorrow, with annual capacity for production of over 2 million barrels of fine beer. Each year, Pabst utilizes the grain yield from 100,000 acres of America's finest farmlands, an area 7 times as large as New York's Manhattan. Pabst pays $10 million annually in taxes, gives work to thousands of men in its own plants, and makes work for tens of thousands more in other industries. For Pabst uses annually 150 million pounds of coal. Refinery workers provide its gasoline and oil. Glass handlers turn out millions of bottles. Cans mean work for steel men. Trucks for automobile workers. Machinery, paper, lumber, rubber. Railroad workers haul 25,000 cars a year to fill Pabst needs. 15,000 truckloads hauled from the breweries. 25,000 American families are supported by Pabst activities. Among the thousands of Pabst Brewery employees are many who were literally born and bred in the brewery. Men who look back upon 30, 40, 50 years of service, whose fathers and grandfathers were brewers before them. In the Pabst plant, long years of ripe experience make mature age an honorable distinction. The health and welfare of so valuable a personnel is carefully guarded. Medical facilities are provided for the benefit of every employee. This Pabst hospital sees most of its uses for preventive purposes. For as successive National Safety Council awards testify, safety standards are high with Pabst. Small wonder that here are master workers to whom the brewing of Pabst beer is never just a livelihood, but always a fine art and an honorable tradition. A tradition whose future is assured by the trained efforts of countless younger men, following in the footsteps of past masters of the craft. The high caliber of the entire personnel is perhaps best reflected by the exceptional wage standards. To the Pabst breweries, 80,000 visitors or more come each year, find a cordial welcome awaiting them in charming reception quarters. People from every station and walk of life, from nearby towns and far-off lands. For beer is an historic beverage beloved of all mankind, and Pabst is an honored name wherever good beer is known. Let's join a group on a tour through the brewery and learn firsthand how Pabst Blue Ribbon is made. Learn why this champion brew scores a triumph in taste with millions of beer drinkers the world over. First to the laboratory, nerve center of the entire plant. Here, every step in the brewery's operation is completely and carefully controlled by a staff of chemists and technicians who are included among the foremost brewing experts in the world. Headed by Dr. Alfred J. Shedler, grand old man of American brewing, the ever-watchful laboratory is in constant touch with the technical heads of every department. Never-ending accurate analysis keeps every product up to the high Pabst standard of quality and purity. Continual research and experiment constantly strive to improve these standards if possible. Everything used, and only the best is good enough, is checked to the highest specifications. Specifications that make champions. Championship barley for one. Barley with a heritage. See these plumed heads parading windswept down the field, fit to take their place in any parade of champions. Not by chance, not through fortunate accident, are these fields productive of the finest brewing barley in the world. Careful selection of choice seed every year for many years. Planted in most suitable soil in areas of most favorable climate. Cultivated by farmers of skill with materials and equipment of proven superiority. This is pedigreed barley. Yet even the best of grain as it comes from the farm is not ready for making beer. The grain must be prepared by special processes ordinarily carried out not by the brewer, but by outside maltsters and millers. But Pabst malts and mills its own grain, and Pabst alone among all the breweries in America has facilities to process all the grain it uses. Thus, Pabst controls its materials to meet its own standards every step of the way. The final seal of acceptance must come from the laboratory before the barley is admitted to the malt house. Samples of every lot submitted to the Pabst grain buyers are carefully examined. The layman could probably not choose between them, but the eye and nose of the expert detect tiny flaws, the difference between good and best. Here is a random group of kernels from an approved batch. Here is a random group from a rejected sample of barley. These kernels are not up to the highest Pabst standards. This barley is true to its heritage, fit to make a perfect brew, the kind of barley that's needed to make championship blue ribbon beer. After laboratory check, the grain comes to these great storage elevators, nearly 100 million pounds a year. From here, the grain begins its 6-month journey through more than 30 different processes, slow, sure, accurate, but above all, natural processes. For in every one, the guiding factor is natural growth. In making Pabst Blue Ribbon beer, natural growth starts in the malt house steep room, where the barley begins its transformation into rich, nourishing malt. An exact amount of pure water is drawn and constantly aerated by clean compressed air. At a precise level, a spill gate opens, and a golden stream of grain, thoroughly cleaned and graded for perfect, full size, pours into the tank. Here it soaks or steeps, just as if in the earth, moistened by gentle spring rains. Throughout the entire process, the water is changed continually, and at regular intervals, fresh, clean air is again forced into the tank to agitate the grain, assuring uniform steeping for every kernel of barley, an absolute essential in the production of fine malt. Here, as in all other processes, every possible variable factor is adjusted and regulated to an exact degree by precision devices and instruments that determine, control, and record temperature, time, humidity, pressure. Absolute, unrelenting control every step of the way. Control that takes nothing for granted, leaves nothing to chance. Championship control. The steeping process finished, the barley, containing just the right amount of moisture, starts its period of even, natural growth in the germination rooms. Perfect weather is made to order. Weather that equals nature's best efforts, but weather that never changes. It's always constant, always perfect barley weather, made perfect here in the attemperator room, where powerful fans suck air from outdoors through coils which warm it in winter, cool it in summer, Keep it always at just the right degree of temperature. 4 successive water curtains thoroughly wash the air to assure absolute purity as well as an exact amount of humidity before it enters the germination rooms. During germination, a continual current of clean, humidified air passes through the heaps of barley. It is drawn by suction down through perforations in the bottom of each grain compartment. Thermometers are thrust into the barley, 1 every 20 feet. Every hour on the dot, the temperature is carefully checked and recorded to maintain ideal growing conditions for the grain. Slowly moving plows travel continuously through the grain to maintain uniform conditions throughout the entire heap. Evenly, naturally, slowly, the barley grows and germinates, just as if planted in the earth's richest soil. After 2 days of painstaking culture, tiny rootlets begin to sprout. 6 to 8 days complete the germination process. The barley is now malted. Its hard, inner, starchy substance has softened into mellow malt, forerunner of beer beyond compare. When germination is finished, the malted barley passes on for thorough drying under accurately controlled heat in a series of huge kilns. The resulting malt, thoroughly cleaned to remove all traces of the rootlets or malt sprouts, now looks much the same as barley fresh from the harvest. But there's considerable difference inside. The laboratory cutter helps establish the change that has taken place. This part is raw barley. This is malted barley. Now a keen blade slices the kernels for an examination of the inside of each grain. Notice how the barley resists the point. The interior is tough, hard, flinty. But the specimens of malt crumble, soft and mealy. This is Pabst malt, a championship malt, destined for a championship brew. After weeks of further mellowing in huge storage bins, the malt is ready for grinding, carefully watched by head miller Herman Hyman, who has spent 46 active years in the brewery. With such a man, pride of product and tradition ensures painstaking care to provide a malt ground according to instructions from the laboratory for perfect results. Now the malt is ready for the huge mash tubs, where great revolving rakes blend malt and water into a smooth, even-textured mash. As the mixture is heated, the malt starch slowly changes into malt sugar and dextrins, and the rate and degree of this conversion greatly determines the quality of the finished product. Time and temperature must be governed to a fine point of accuracy. Absolute control every step of the way. Championship control, the kind that makes championship Pabst Blue Ribbon. In a battery of powerful mash filters, 70 filters in one, the mash gives up its liquid content. Under constant controlled pressure, it passes through fine mesh filtering cloths. For every new batch of mash, fresh white filter cloths are used to ensure full flow and sterile pure filtration. The extracted liquid, or wort as it is called, pours from the presses under the watchful eyes of another master brewer, Louis Brauch, oldest Pabst employee in point of service, who himself holds a championship record. During his more than 50 years in the Pabst brew house, he has brewed more beer than any other man in the world. When Louis approves its color and clarity, we can be sure that Pabst wort is just about perfect, an ingredient of championship caliber to make a championship beer. Now we're ready for the actual cooking in what might be called the kitchen, and what a kitchen it is. 3 stories high, a building full of huge kettles, each capable of producing 12,000 gallons of beer at each brewing. No, not just beer, but Pabst beer. And by now it's easy to understand the difference. Polished, shining copper, gleaming white tile walls, every single pot and parcel as spick and span and spotless as the tidiest Dutch housewife could wish. From a great mosaic window at the far end, King Gambrinus, the legendary patron saint of brewing, smiles approval of these faithful followers of his art. An approval shared by 5 generations of discriminating beer lovers who have steadfastly acclaimed the quality of Pabst Blue Ribbon. Ready for boiling, the wort flows from the mash filters into the kettle. Because fine beer is a delicate beverage, it takes long years of rich experience to deftly control the chemical and physical changes wrought in brewing, the all-important natural changes that determine ultimate taste and quality. At just the right instant, in go the hops, beer's second important ingredient that adds zest, tang, savory flavor, and other important qualities. For hops are to beer what seasoning is to food. But before they're admitted, these hops have passed exacting, rigid entrance examinations. Pedigreed hops from the finest fields in Europe, the choicest flowers from the selected yields, first choice of old world brewers since time immemorial. Domestic hops, too, America's finest, carefully cultivated from pedigreed plants in tested soil that receives just enough sun, just enough rain. While the wort brews, hops are added in exact quantities at determined intervals of time. Each period yields a different result from the aromatic hop flowers, and each result plays an important part in the finished product. As the process draws to a close, Louis Brauch tests a sample from the kettle. His expert eye determines when the boiling has proceeded just far enough, a decision of extreme importance that demands experienced judgment, exact timing, perfect timing. When the brewing is completed, the hopped wort is piped into this tile-walled air-conditioned room, where it flows over a series of cooler coils. Rigid temperature control is a vital necessity at this point, for the brew must be cooled at a precise rate, not too fast, not too slow. Rigid room conditioning plays its part too. No one enters this hospital clean room except in freshly sterilized clothes and footwear. Here, for the last time, Pabst beer in the making is exposed to the air. From now on, it is always sealed in enclosed tanks, always kept at the same cool temperature. And now we are ready for the next important ingredient, yeast. Yeast ferments wort, splits its sugar into alcohol and carbonic gas, gives it pep, sparkle, zest, and life. Yeast is composed of tiny cells, of which there are thousands of types and varieties, each variety with its own particular character. Here is how an unselected sample of yeast looks under the microscope. Note all the different shapes and types. Most types not at all suited to the brewing of beer. Indeed, so unsuited that even a very small percentage of the wrong type would ruin the beer it entered. Out of the many thousand varieties, one cell type, and one only, is perfect for brewing. Pure culture means that every cell in the countless billions is identical in character to every other, all descendants of the same family, all of the same strain. Years of research and experiment finally identified the perfect beer yeast. To obtain a pure culture of this yeast, a single perfect cell is found, selected and removed, then carefully inserted into a precise amount of nutritive fluid where growth begins. The single cell soon divides and becomes two. Two divide and become four. Thus, yeast grows, reproducing itself in perfect form to make a pure yeast culture. In starting the growth of each batch of yeast, a cluster of these pure culture cells, descendants of the original strain, is taken from the incubator. Growth begins when the culture cell is transferred from the slide container into a small phial, containing a precise amount of nourishing fluid. The process of division and reproduction immediately gets underway. As the batch gets larger, it is transferred from small container to larger, always in completely enclosed tubes, jars, vats, always under conditions of perfect sterility, of controlled purity, till finally a tub like this is filled with pure yeast, all grown from one pure, perfect cell, pedigreed yeast, yeast with a heritage. Even here, quality is never taken for granted. Before the yeast goes to the fermentation building, a sample is taken from each tub for final checkup and approval. As a final check on purity, the selected culture cells are examined under the microscope. This yeast is true to its heritage. Every cell, perfect brewer's yeast. After thorough check and test by the laboratory, a sterile suction hose carries the yeast to the fermentation tanks. Each single cell fit to play a winning role in the production of championship beer. The huge fermentation tanks require separate buildings of their own. Here is a building 8 stories high, literally filled with beer. Each of these windows opens onto a long tiled corridor. A corridor lined with small oval peep doors, each looking into the large room beyond. Each room a huge tank, where a proper amount of hopped wort and its precise allotment of yeast come for the period of controlled fermentation, from 10 to 12 days, during which carbonic gas from the brew is drawn off into special tanks to be returned again to the beer in later stages of its development. After fermentation, the beer flows on to the storage buildings, within whose walls are hundreds of specially lined steel aging tanks with a combined capacity of 130 million bottles or cans of beer, kept at constant near-freezing temperature by the most modern refrigerating equipment. The cooling units used provide a typical example of the progress so evident throughout the entire Pabst plant. These compact, powerful machines are the last word in mechanical refrigeration, just as these refrigeration machines were the last word in their day. But that day was more than half a century ago, for when installed by Pabst, these were the first cooling devices ever used in an American brewery. Perfectly cooled in row after row of tanks like these, the beer undergoes months of natural ripening, mellowing, aging, maturing slowly, continually under laboratory observation to determine the exact time when the beer has reached the peak of condition. Again, timing plays an important part to assure beer at its best. When exact laboratory tests show that the beer is right, it is ready for the ingenious carbonating machines. Here, the natural carbonic gas taken from the brew during fermentation is now restored to it. The whirling, frothy spray imparts zip, tang, life, foretells a delectable, foamy, rich color, the crowning glory of Pabst beer. Then a final polishing filtration through sterile pure pads of cellulose, where every last trace of solid material is thoroughly filtered out. In this important process, every material employed is the finest money can buy. Every device used is the best that man can make. Every single step taken is the most efficient and thorough that human skill and experience can provide. For it is to perfect filtration and clarification that Pabst Blue Ribbon beer owes much of its unparalleled purity, color, brilliancy, and clarity. Prime, mellow, absolutely pure, the beer flows from the press in a golden stream, an appetizing promise of delicious refreshment to beer drinkers the world over. Then the final check. This little act is known to old-time brewery men as zwickling. And Louis Kempf is a champion zwickler, having spent 32 of his 48 years with Pabst here in the cellars. Untouched by human hands, protected from air, the beer flows on through pipelines in a block-long tunnel, a tunnel which also marks a milestone in brewing history. Still in daily operation, this pipeline was the first to carry beer from cellar to packaging house in any brewery in the world, the first to guarantee complete sterility of product. This Pabst development in better handling of food products was authorized by special act of Congress. In the huge packaging house, Pabst continues to set the pace for sanitary handling. The containers used are most carefully selected. Sturdy, strong, and well made for protection during shipping. Thoroughly sterilized for absolute purity and cleanliness. Scientifically designed and constructed to maintain Pabst fine quality from brewery to user. Filling equipment is controlled automatically. The most modern, accurate devices ensuring full measure of Pabst Blue Ribbon in each container. Streamlined compact cans are carefully sealed by mechanical means, cleanly, surely, and almost more swiftly than the eye can see. With military precision, cans parade through a 30-foot curtain of water, scientifically handled to retain full quality of the beer until the can is opened for use. After pasteurization, the containers crowd out on conveyor belts to be whisked along to the casing line. Packed in rugged cottons, the cans are ready for their journey to a thirsty world. Cottons destined to bring deep, flavorful satisfaction to discriminating drinkers everywhere. Bottles, too, are handled just as carefully. First, perfectly cleaned and sterilized. Then, filled with Pabst Blue Ribbon beer. Pabst is proud indeed of the fact that more people bring its beer to their homes than any other brand, a distinction which is the greatest tribute that can be paid to its quality. For to please the family, as well as friends, nothing but the best will do, be it furnishings, food, or beverages. Pasteurization in these modern, efficient machines protects the famous Pabst quality, quality worthy to be labeled Pabst Blue Ribbon, a label that reflects upon the good taste of the server, just as surely as it reflects upon the good judgment of the dealer who sells it. That's why Blue Ribbon is to be had all over America, Europe, throughout the world. Everywhere fine beer is in demand. For beer on draft, Pabst modern, specially lined steel containers set new high standards. Pabst kegs maintain championship quality just as it comes from the brewery. Pabst steel kegs are made to rigid specifications, which ensure fullest measure in every keg, providing more glasses of better beer. Championship beer that streams in an endless procession of bottles, cans, kegs, hundreds of millions of them, year in, year out. Onto trains, trucks, and ships for its journey to discriminating drinkers of fine beer everywhere. From the huge Pabst breweries at Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Peoria, Illinois, Pabst Blue Ribbon beer travels to every state in the Union, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, from the Gulf of Mexico to the Great Lakes, north to Alaska, and south to the Argentine, Mexico, Brazil, Chile, to the romantic lands of South and Central America, across the seas on humble freighters and luxury liners to far-off countries of the Old World, England, France, Belgium, and a host of others, too numerous to mention. Darkest Africa brightens up with Pabst Blue Ribbon. In the Far East and down under in Australia, the name is known and honored. Such is the fame of Pabst quality that Pabst exports more beer than any other brewery in America. In over 80 foreign countries, in every corner of the world, beer lovers acclaim its excellence and thrill to its sparkle and zest. That's why, where the smart world sets the pace, Pabst gets the call. It's Pabst Blue Ribbon for the thrill of keener refreshment. Here it is amid thrills of excitement at the famous Santa Anita racetrack. Never before has the sport of kings enjoyed a more glorious setting. It's Southern California's paradise of thoroughbreds and fashion. There's a blue ribbon winner of thirst-quenching goodness at the clubhouse and in the grandstand as pounding hoofs carry another winner across the line. At Miami's Roney Plaza, at Chicago's Ambassador Pump Room, and here at the Coconut Grove in Hollywood's Hotel Ambassador, Pabst gets the call. In these acknowledged centers of smartness, keen living reigns supreme. And with the brightest stars from every walk of life, Pabst Blue Ribbon is the password to keener enjoyment of every golden moment. On the Normandy, luxury liner and flagship of the French line, it's Pabst for happy days at sea. Here in the most sumptuous hotel afloat, genius in decor and cuisine meets genius in brewing. Pabst, the world favorite of world travelers. And at fine hotels throughout the land, the St. Regis, New York, the Mayflower, Washington, the Greenbrier, White Sulphur Springs, and here at New York's Waldorf Astoria, again, Pabst gets the call. We're in the famous Tony Sarg Oasis, one of New York's smartest meeting places. Here, as in other swank restaurants of the Waldorf, the fashionable world relaxes and refreshes with delicious Pabst Blue Ribbon. At the Royal Hawaiian on the beach at Waikiki, once the playground of Hawaiian kings, this magnificent hotel of indescribable beauty fronts a world-famous surf and sand of unsurpassed splendor. Here at this tropical paradise under azure blue skies, Pabst gets the call. And at New York's bright night spots, the El Morocco, the Stork Club, wherever society mingles with the world celebrities of stage, radio, screen, and press, it's Pabst Blue Ribbon, where the gay, the sophisticated, and the elegant meet. Their choice is always the same. Wherever the smart world sets the pace, Pabst gets the call. It's the thoroughbred of beers. Pabst Blue Ribbon for keener refreshment. Acclaimed by all, the brand of a champion.